Hey everyone, welcome to my very first YouTube video. We're going to be starting a series here based on my park inspired by Paris. This actually initially was supposed to be a park that was going to be inspired by a trip I took to Europe last summer, but it sort of has morphed into Paris/French park, and that's the direction we're going to go. So a couple disclaimers before we really dive into the video here. One, this is my very first video. I learned how to, edit, record sound, record gameplay, all that stuff. And in the process of recording the gameplay, I quickly realized that there's a right way to do it, and there's the way that I play the game, which doesn't always look that good when the footage is being sped up. So most of the stuff I've recorded since this is much better, and I don't move the camera around quite as much, but apologies in advance if the camera jerking around makes you nauseous at all. So going forward, the series should be much better than it is in this video, and I've definitely tried to delete most of the footage that was pretty bad. So anyway, this first building that we're going to be working on is an entryway inspired by Hotel de Ville in Paris. And if you aren't from Europe or have never been to Paris, you might not be as familiar with this building, but it's definitely one of my favorite buildings in Paris, definitely top three, and I think it's just really interesting. It's got interesting roof lines. The accent chimneys on the side are really interesting, and it just got tons of great detail. So I thought it would make a perfect entryway into the park. And so yeah, that's what we're going to be working on today. Now with these side roofs here, I guess they're, I don't want to call them towers really, but the accent roofs on the side of the main roof building, I wanted to try to use them with the in-game roofs. Those really tall roof pieces have almost the right angle to them. But the problem is, if you look at photos of Hotel de Ville, you'll see that the fronts of these accent roofs are very flat and almost square at the top, like you're kind of seeing right here. And if I was to use the in-game pieces, they would be very, it would all come to a point, and it would be very square. And this is flat on the front and back, and it comes to a point on the sides, and so that's really the look I was going for, and that means the only option was to make them myself. So fortunately I was able to cut down on some of the piece count, I guess, by using these flat roof pieces to give the illusion of shingles and sort of fill in the gaps, and then I use these triangle pieces to fill in the areas where if I just used that rectangle, it would poke through the wood boundary, and these triangles allow you to get as close to the edge as possible without it poking through. But they are a giant pain in the ass to work with. They were rotating all kinds of crazy ways, and it was pretty frustrating to work on, actually. But I left it in the video, even though there's a lot of kind of trial and error that I'm working on here, a lot of tweaking, primarily because I think most people who play the game would tell you that, a lot of what you see in a finished product is nothing even close to the amount of work that goes into actually building in this game, and there's probably a significant portion that just gets trashed altogether because it looks like shit, and you got to go back to the drawing board and edit and redo and tweak things. And so if you're playing the game and you find yourself getting frustrated, I would just encourage you to not be afraid to, delete things and start over, and just go through a lot of trial and error to get things right. I mean, when I first started playing this game, I had come over from playing Parkitect, and that game I was able to do a lot of things that I was really happy with. I was able to build things that I was sort of envisioning in my mind, and so when I picked up Planet Coaster, I was thinking like, oh my gosh, I'll be able to do infinitely more things because there's so much more flexibility in the game. Not everything's tied to a grid. There's all these shapes that they don't have in Parkitect, and so I was really looking forward to picking it up. And then as soon as I started playing, I spent about the first 20 hours wanting to smash my head against the wall because I just wasn't getting anywhere and wasn't getting it to look the way I wanted to. And so one thing that I actually started doing was just downloading stuff from the workshop. There's a ton of amazing content on there, and what I would do is I would download things, and then I would like basically dissect what people had created and take things that I wanted to use and add them to other buildings. And it really helped me learn the building process a lot more. And then the other thing that I did was I just watched a ton of YouTube videos, and you can pick up so many tips and tricks from watching some of the amazing things people create on YouTube. And it's a little bit silly for me to give a shout out to these people because I have like 3 followers on my channel right now, but maybe you come to this video, you have no idea about Planet Coaster, and this is the first video you watch. You should definitely check out some other people who are far and above, better than what I'm doing in this game, and that's Silvarret, who we all probably owe the bulk of the building techniques and sort of the way that things are manipulated in the game. He deserves a ton of credit for that. I think he's probably been one of the most innovative people to develop this game, or to build in this game, I should say. Another one is Uthris. When I referenced that I used a lot of stuff from the workshop, I mean, he's got a ton of great workshop content, and there's several things of his that I would use in like an early park of mine, and I would just like dissect. Like, I really like that pillar that he used, and so I'm going to take that out and I'm going to use it in this building over here. So definitely check that out. And then another one is Sdanwolf. Hopefully I'm pronouncing these people's names correctly also, but he's got a great page as well, and he does some really amazing things with like the art shapes. There's he has one ride entrance that's like Transformers themed that looks ridiculous. It's so good. DeLadysigner, you're probably familiar with her as well if you know those other people. She's got a lot of amazing content. Flabaliki, who has an awesome Let's Play going on right now, and Rudi, who the reason I know Rudi is because of the collab that he's doing with Silvarret right now, but since then I've subscribed to his page, and he's got some amazing stuff as well. In fact, I think Silvarret referenced it in their last collaboration video, that the space mountain that Rudi made, it's not often that you scroll across a photo and you have to do a double take to realize that it's not real life, that it's actually in the game. So anyway, like I said, it's silly for me to give those people a shout out here, but if you happen to not know who they are and you're seeing this video, definitely check them out. They're worth a follow on YouTube for sure. So anyway, back into the build here. Like I said, I'm just copying around what I've already done and putting the building pieces on this main section of roof. And it's, like I said, one of the great things about this game is the ability to just copy and paste things. It can definitely speed up the building process. Even with as flexible as the building process is, though, I definitely take forever to build things. So, I would love, if you like this video, for you to follow. Just be forewarned, though, I'm not going to have content every week. My goal will be every 2 weeks have a new video up, because I'm still pretty slow at building in the game right now. A couple things I want to point out. So one, in the video right now, I'm building another, what I consider to be pretty crucial aspect of the building, and it's the central tower that you'll see in the photos. And it's sort of a 2-domed tower. So there's a main dome, and then there's a smaller sort of cupola dome that sticks out from the top of it. And again, if you need an awesome tutorial on building domes, Silvarret has one. And that's definitely how I learned to build these various domes. Also off camera, I finished the other roofs and the sort of side chimneys that you'll see on the building, and that's primarily because the chimneys themselves were really difficult to make, and there's a lot of trial and error that went into it, and so I ended up doing those off camera, but I'm really happy with how they turned out. I used, there's like a brick accent piece that I used, and then I used that for like the main structure, and then just added some wall pieces, and added like the Corinthian pillar topper and the pillar base to the very top to give the sort of perspective of the chimneys in real life. So And that's sort of something that, as you're building in the game, I always sort of look at and consider that, you're just going for the general look of something. I mean, even if you think about it in real life, how often do you really stop and look at the fine details of a building? I mean, with the exception of maybe you're on vacation or you're somewhere you've never been before, you might be more kind of aware of your surroundings. But the same thing goes in this game. You're just going for a general look that if you were to glance at a building for 10 seconds, you would be like, oh, yep, that's that building. You would recognize it instantly. So that's one thing that I think can go a long way in kind of capturing realism. Another one is color. I just saw a clip in the video here where I'm adjusting the color of things. One of the things that's difficult in the game is that different materials, you can apply the same color to different materials and they will look completely different. So one sort of rule of thumb I found is that if you look at the wood pieces, and let's say you were just to dye a wood piece a particular shade of green, and you were to paste that same green to a metal piece or to an art shape, the art shape's probably going to look a lot brighter and shinier. And so a pretty good rule of thumb I found is just, if you're trying to match colors and if you're moving a color from a wood piece to an art shape or a metal piece, you're going to want to make it lighter. And then if you're moving it from an art shape or a metal piece to wood, you're going to want to make it a little bit darker. And that was one of the biggest hurdles I faced on the Eiffel Tower build, is that getting the color. So most of the Eiffel Tower is the wood pillars. So it's like the 2 meter, 4 meter, and 8 meter wood pillars that make up the Eiffel Tower. And I really felt like as I started building, I nailed the color on those. But then there's some more intricate details where I needed to use the art shapes, and I had a really hard time matching the colors. And I finally got it to where I think that they look almost like they're the same material, especially when the sun's glaring off of it. Like in this, I think I have the game set to 12 o'clock right now, noon, and you can definitely see it they are all kind of shining the same way. So to kind of go on that same tangent of the Eiffel Tower build, the way that I was able to kind of capture the realism of the Eiffel Tower was thankfully due to the fact that there is a ton of information about it online. So, not every building you might try to recreate is going to have the dimensions available. But you can actually find photos of the original blueprints for the Eiffel Tower online. And you absolutely can find plenty of reference material with the dimensions of it, both the width of the base and the height. And so what I did was I figured out how tall I could build in the game and knew what my restriction would be there. And it actually ended up being about 40% the size of the real Eiffel Tower. As that's as high as it could go. So then knowing that, I knew to take the width of the building in real life, reduce it by 40%, and then using the 4 meter tall pillars, I sort of built out a scale for me to follow. So I stacked them until I reached the height of that bottom observation deck. I stacked them until I reached the height of that middle observation deck, and then I stacked them until I reached the height of the top observation deck. And then for the base, I use flat roof pieces to map out the perimeter of the Eiffel Tower. And that actually ended up being really handy because what I could do then was I only had to work on one section, and then I could copy all of those wood pieces, those wood beams, and then select just one of the flat roof pieces and move it, one grid piece over, and it would create the appearance of that sort of geometrical shape you find on the Eiffel Tower. So it ended up being a ton of fun to build. It took forever, but it was a lot of fun, and I couldn't be more thrilled with how it turned out. So like I said, unfortunately no build video on that, but at the time I was not equipped to do recordings or anything like that. So also the two sort of side buildings on the main street you'll see there, built those before I was able to record as well. So, but I will make a couple comments on those. So the one on the right is definitely more traditional to what you find in Parisian architecture. The one on the left I was trying to kind of pay homage to Versailles, and I'll probably end up recreating Versailles. And so I've actually since I recorded this, I've changed the colors of that building to be more of that white beige or the yellow beige that you find in a lot of the buildings in Paris. So so obviously I've given away one thing that I'm planning on doing in the future, and that's to recreate Versailles somewhere. But I'm also working on, you probably saw in the intro footage, I'm working on the canals, or really the Seine in Paris, and I'm really happy with how that's coming along. I still have a lot of detail work to do there, but one of the reasons I wanted to create that is, one, just because it's such a prominent feature of the city, but two is Paris has so many unbelievable bridges that I thought it would be a great opportunity to kind of recreate those. And you'll see when I do have video footage of that, and you'll see that when I make it, I was actually able to copy the grid across the span of the bridge. So that was really helpful in getting everything to sort of line up really well. And it like I said, I'm really happy with how it's coming so far. Then in addition to those things, I'm going to create a monorail station that's inspired by Musée Orsay. And if you've ever been to Paris, you probably know the story of that museum. At one point in time, it was a train station. And so I thought that would be a great option to use as a monorail station. And then I should probably build a ride. I mean, this is a theme park game. So right now all we have is a coffee shop and a fry shop. So I should probably build some flat rides and a roller coaster. But in terms of buildings, those are some of the things I have planned. Assuming that my frame rate isn't completely shot when I finish the main street and finish the monorail station and build some rides, I will probably work on the Louvre as well. I'd love to do, and I'd love to do Notre Dame as well. So we'll see where the series kind of goes. I mean, honestly, I could see this series taking like a year to do. So there will definitely be plenty of content to come. Plenty of videos to come, and I have a setup now where I can record literally all of my gameplay. So hopefully, I don't really think I'm doing anything all that innovative in the game. I'm definitely just doing things that people have done before me. So I don't know if watching this series you'll pick up a ton of tips and tricks. I mean, I'm sure there's a couple things here or there that I might be doing that maybe other people aren't aware of, but for the most part, I'm really just going for realism and recreating a lot of the things that I experienced on my trip to Paris. So if that's your thing, then definitely subscribe, because there will be more videos like that in the future. And like I said, hopefully my computer doesn't die before we get to that stage. But yeah, a couple of random sort of nerdy architecture things that I found out. So someone on Reddit actually pointed out to me, because I referred to this as like Parisian architecture, and they gave me a little bit of education and told me that it's actually called Haussmann style. And so Napoleon III actually appointed George Haussmann, I believe is his name, to recreate Paris. So we really owe the beauty of Paris to one kind of individual architect. And a lot of his work took place between I think the 1850s, and he was actually really controversial. I learned as I kind of researched about it. A lot of the people in Paris were not happy about the design and the aesthetic that he was implementing, which I think is really funny, because when we think of Paris today, I mean, I'm sure not everyone holds this opinion, but I certainly do. I think it's one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And the fact that at one point in time, the style was so controversial and was something that people didn't want to see it's crazy to me. And I actually found that similar story for the Eiffel Tower. I mean, there were a ton of artists actually who were up in arms about the Eiffel Tower. I mean, they saw it as this ugly monstrosity that was going to be towering over their city. And I actually, when I was on Wikipedia researching it, I found a really interesting quote that I'm going to read real quick here that talks about the artists' protest of the Eiffel Tower. So it says, "We writers, painters, sculptors, architects, and passionate devotees of the hitherto untouched beauty of Paris protest with all our strength, with all our indignation, in the name of the slighted French taste, against the erection of this useless and monstrous Eiffel Tower. To bring our arguments home, imagine for a moment a giddy, ridiculous tower dominating Paris like a gigantic black smokestack, crushing under its barbaric bulk Notre Dame, the Tours Saint-Jacques, the Louvre, the Dome of Les Invalides, the Arc de Triomphe. All of our humiliated monuments will disappear in this ghastly dream, for 20 years we shall see stretching like a blot of ink the hateful shadow of the hateful column of bolted sheet metal." A little bit dramatic, I think, especially considering, the Eiffel Tower is now revered as one of the world's most beautiful structures. But I think it's funny. So if you think about the timeline, the Eiffel Tower was, when it was constructed, versus when people were all up in arms about, how they were going to reshape Paris with Haussmann. So Haussmann did all of his work in like the 1850s, and some of it continued into like 1927, I think. And then the Eiffel Tower, constructed in 1887, it's like, I guess it's a good lesson that people have always kind of feared something new and feared change. And that at the end of the day, things aren't always as bad as they might seem on paper. So anyway, just really funny. One other thing I forgot to mention about the Eiffel Tower is that if you look at the top of the tower today, the cupola is like pretty much covered up by TV antennas and cell phone antennas, and it just looks like a clump of shit on top of it. Like, it really is kind of sad, the top of the tower. I mean, I guess it goes unnoticed because you can't really see it in that much detail when you're like on the ground or in the city. But compared to the original, the original was much more beautiful at the top, and so I really struggled to find reference material for the original. I mean, I had the blueprints, but it was flat. The blueprints were flat, so it was kind of hard to get a perception of the total look of it. But thankfully, there's a ton of 3D models that people have created for 3D printers, and I was able to take some inspiration from some of those to finish the top of it, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. So I've had some people request that I upload it on the workshop, and right now it's about 12,000 pieces. So, I could maybe break it up into, four sets and do it that way. But it could be difficult to reconstruct depending on how I do that. So what I'll probably end up doing is when either I get to a point where I feel like the park is done, I'll upload the park, or if I get to a point where my computer just can't handle the park anymore, I'll upload it, and some of you people with, the monster CPUs can take it from there. So, so pretty much most of the buildings, I mean, I've uploaded the one Main Street building that's on the left of the workshop. The Main Street building on the right, I have to do some work too to kind of reduce some of the pieces. I think I can get it under 2,000, and then I'll upload that on the workshop for everyone to have. Hotel de Ville is also around 11,000 pieces, so I won't, unfortunately, be able to upload that again unless I find a way to do it in different sections. But at some point in time, long story short, at some point in time, this entire park will be available on the workshop for download. So anyway, that's enough random tangents. We'll get back to what I'm doing in the building here. Again, spending a lot of time focusing on the prominent features. I think a lot of times if you get the prominent features of the building accurate, then everything else kind of becomes white noise. So I really spent a lot of time on that central tower, that central area of the building. And then these dormers were actually pretty easy to do. I just used the window with a door and added some of the icing that's shaded to kind of look similar to the other structures around it, and got the look that I was going for. Then just copied it around. So I selected all the pieces that were not on a grid, and then all I did was select one grid piece, and it becomes real easy to copy around. And even if you, it's off center there, so all you have to do is if you copy the non-grid pieces with one grid piece, you can put it in place, deselect the grid piece, and then use the advanced move to get it in position exactly how you want it. So that made quick work of sort of the remaining details on this building. So basically all that's left now, I've got most of it done at this point in the build, at least, you know, what it should look like, and it's just a matter of copying around things to fill in the blank walls and fill in missing windows and things like that. So for the base of the building, again, nothing really all that groundbreaking. I just used the really tall castle doors. I sunk those into the wall to kind of give the illusion of some of the detail work you see in the real thing. And then fortunately the in-game windows are actually pretty close to what they look like in real life, and so I just was able to put those on the wall. Just made sure to copy the pattern that was on the building. And then you know, one thing I wish the game did have is more sort of accent pieces, and obviously not everyone is doing, you know, builds like this, but I think there's plenty of architecture around the world that really has you know, really has the look of detail to it that's similar and you find in Parisian architecture. And a lot of it that typically means is like carvings and statues and things like that. And I really wish the game had more things like that aren't just necessarily in the style of some of the in-game themes. You know, I understand certainly why Frontier did it that way, but just selfishly, I wish that there was more just like sort of true to life statues and things like that available to us to use. So yeah, so here I'm just, all I did was copy the building and move it over, and then I just started deleting the pieces I didn't want to copy to the other side, and then I just left one grid piece, like just that center white wall, and then recopied it all and pasted it over to the other side of the building there. So, and again, not to belabor a point, but to go back to what I talked about earlier, like there's so much work that I did off camera because I just did a ton of trial and error and like didn't like the way something looked and tweaked it and, you know, redid it and things like that. And recopying that sort of detail on the main face of the building to the other side is an example of that. You know, I was trying different things, and once I had what I liked, you know, it was easy to copy around. But sometimes you'll find yourself in a situation where you just can't quite get the look you're going for. But again, I would just encourage you to keep trying and keep trying different things. This is another. So if you look there closely and you look at the photos, you know, of the real thing, you'll see I use those sort of balconies to create the illusion of some of those sculptures I was talking about. Like the Hotel de Ville in real life has like a statue where each one of those little balconies is. And so just trying to create the illusion of that look by adding those pieces in there. And then here I'm just finishing the border on the roof. And a lot of the building in this game too, I think, especially if you're trying to recreate something in real life, is you can get it as close as you possibly can, and then you sort of have to fill in the gaps with your imagination. And it's kind of like in Jurassic Park, like they fill in the gaps, the genetic gaps with frog DNA. Like that's what you have to do in this game if you're recreating something. Not everything is going to be accurate or to scale or whatever. But the nice thing is that there's so much flexibility. For the most part, you can pretty much get the overall project to look the way that you'd like it to. So, yeah, we're getting pretty close to the end of the video here. And I'll definitely have more cinematic shots at the end of the finished building. One other thing that I'll just, you know, note on is that I think the night shots in this game are incredible. They look so real. I mean, you can get some daytime shots that look really good too. But one thing I found in taking, you know, photos of your park or even video now that I'm doing that is if you change the time of day to, like in photography, there's something called the golden hours or golden hour. And usually that's when the sun is setting. You get great light, you get great shadows, and so a lot of the photos I've taken in the game have been done around, like, I'll set the in-game clock to, you know, around 4:30, or there's, I think around 5:30, what happens is there's still light, but you can get like the in-game lights turn on, and you can get some great shots that way that look really realistic. And then obviously just the nighttime shots look great too. So yeah, that's just one little tip when you're taking photos of your park or taking video of your park. If you want to get some things that look maybe a little more photorealistic, you can definitely get it done that way. So again, we're getting close to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you like the video, give it a like and subscribe, and be more than more than honored for your subscription, and definitely look forward to creating more content for you guys in the future. So yeah, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next episode.